Welcome back to another episode of UFC Casuals. I'm Bobby, along with my co-host Andrew. And today, we got a lot to talk about. Since our last episode, just hours after, a whole bunch of swapping around of the fights in the co-main and main event of UFC 294. We tried to get an emergency episode in, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to record with some connection issues. So we put it off until today, but we're back. We're excited to talk about it. And we won't waste any more time. We'll jump straight into the new UFC 294 main event, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. The rematch. What do you make of this one this time around?
Well, we went from one rematch where the first fight was very dominant to another rematch where the fight was dead even. So, we upgraded, really. I think everybody said at this point these two new fights we're getting on 294 ended up making it a better card than it would have been. Like, these look like better fights on paper than we would have even had. So, Volkanovski, a gangster, obviously, for taking this fight on 12 days notice. Yes. Fresh off of elbow surgery from his last fight, got it right after the Yair fight in July. Is he going to be 100%? You hope so. If he's taking this fight, he needs to be if he's taking a fight like this. But this was Islam's toughest test by far, other than being knocked out. But it was his toughest test, in the past 5 years. And we're running it back in the same year. I didn't think we'd get it this soon, but here we are.
Yeah, like you said, you're hoping he's going to this fight 100%. I would hope so. At least when it comes to the elbow, I'd hope he's fully recovered from that. But this isn't going to be a Volk that's in the same level of condition as we saw in the first fight. I mean, he's going into this, off that elbow surgery, so he hasn't been training nearly as much. And he said he was weighing 181 pounds, which means he's not in the best shape right now. He's clearly not, ready for a fight, and he was gearing up for a fight, next year in January against I'm blanking here, Ilias Furia.
Yeah.
So this is a much different Volk than we saw in the first fight, and it's going to be a different Islam too, because different rehydration rules. In Perth they only had a 24-hour rehydration window, and down in Abu Dhabi they have 36 hours, which is going to be huge for Islam. They also have different weight cutting rules. I know they're not allowed to use saunas in Perth, which I'm sure they get away with that, but still much different rules. And it's just, there's so many factors outside of the elbow surgery even, and whether or not he's fully recovered from that just help Islam in this fight this go around.
Yeah, and to that point, Volk, the last time these two men fought, he could condition his body to fight for 155. He knew, on months' notice that he was having that fight. So
he was the backup for the first Charles and Islam fight. So he was ready to go with 155 for a while.
He was getting his body ready for that weight class. So then to go, in July for his fight, back down to, featherweight body weight, right? Conditioning for featherweight. And then to think he's still going to be at featherweight, right? Like you mentioned, he thinks he's going to have a fight at featherweight in 3 months. He's sitting on his couch. He's not training, but I'm sure he's having his meals be conditioning his body for, having to cut down to 145. He's not going to be probably as, built as he was last fight. And let's just be honest. I'm sure he conditioned himself big and muscly for 155, and he's not going to have that advantage this time. He did a great job, last time, staying on his feet a lot, getting back up. Obviously, there was that one round where he got kept down, but for the most part, he was able to get back up off of Islam. Is he going to be able to do that this time? Is Islam going to overstrength him, like you mentioned, with the rehydration, rules, with the weight cutting rules in Abu Dhabi? Man, it's a tough fight for Volk, but you got to respect him for taking it.
Yeah, hats off to him for taking this fight and saving this card. I mean, I'm going to be rooting for him. I don't have super high expectations. My expectations for Volk going into this fight are about as high as they were going into the first fight. And he shocked me with the first fight. But I think there's too many cards stacked against him in this one. And I think his confidence is too high. And he's an incredible fighter. But, I mean, these circumstances are very difficult to overcome.
And you got to be confident as a fighter like this. And to go into a fight where nobody thinks you're going to win, that's how he felt the first time. Even though he wasn't home territory, he had the crowd behind him. That could have been a difference. The crowd willing him forward in that last fight. It's going to be pro-Islam crowd this time, and just going into enemy territory, all the odds stacked against you. He's going to be motivated, no doubt. And like you said, he's a confident guy. But man, it's going to be tough because Islam was ready for a true lightweight, and he knows what he got into last time. You saw his face in that 5th round against Volk last time. He looked like he didn't want to be in there anymore.
Yeah,
and I just think he's probably prepared himself knowing that this fight would have to happen again, and he's gonna come in there looking for a big vengeance. He needs to get this one back, and the odds are stacked in his favor, right, with the 12 days notice. So it's all the pressure is on Islam. I think Volk's been saying that a lot this week, and he's 100% right.
That's true. I mean, there's not much to lose. There is still a lot on the line for Volk. I mean, we're talking about such a massive legacy fight here. But if he loses this fight, given the circumstances he took this on, I don't think people are going to fault him too much. Now, granted, if he loses this fight, his chances at becoming double champ at 155 are very slim. It's probably not going to happen, especially ever against Islam. That'll just never happen if he loses this fight. This is his last shot at it, I think. So I wish he would have had a full camp to prepare and fully be able to recover from that elbow injury before he took this. But like you said, I mean, he fought very well when the odds were stacked against him, when nobody believed him going into that first fight. So who knows? And there's not as much pressure on him as there is with Islam.
And in terms of legacy, I just think that, there's nowhere but up this could go for Volk. There's no way this fight is damaging his legacy in any way. He is the featherweight GOAT. No questions about it. He will be, no matter he loses this fight against Islam at lightweight or not. Islam is really the size of a fucking welterweight, right? So if you think about it, he's really moving up 2 weight classes to fight a guy. So, nothing to lose for Volk and all to lose for Islam, who has been criticized a lot for that performance against Volk, and the pressure's going to be on him to put on a more dominant performance this time, I think.
Yeah, I think the big difference going into this fight, compared to the first one at least, is in those later rounds, especially into round 5, where, you saw Islam looking up at the clock. He was getting tired. He was worn out in that 5th round, and Volk kept that pressure going. I think it's going to be the opposite this time around. I think Islam, with the longer rehydration window, he's not going to be he's as tired into those later rounds of the fight. And especially with how he saw that 4th and 5th round play out, mostly the 5th round. 4th round was fine for him, but that last round, it did some damage to him. His gas tank wasn't holding up in that 5th round. So I think that's definitely something he's worked on. He's worked on his strike after that knockout that you mentioned earlier against Adriano Martins. His striking changed drastically. It improved. He didn't rush in as chaotically as he did in that fight afterwards. So I think he learned from, what happened in that Volk fight, albeit even though it was a win. I think he learned from what went wrong. I think this fight is going to be a lot different. Plus the rehydration window being increased for him. I think that's going to play into favor for his gas tank. And then Volk, like you said, and he said it himself, this is his own words. He's coming off the couch. He's not going to have the gas tank he did in that first fight. And Volk said he's going to be hunting that finish early. He said he's confident that he can go out there and get a finish early, which tells me, if he's going to be gunning for that so hard early, and he said he thinks his gas tank could hold up into those later rounds, but he doesn't want to test it. I'm not sure that it would, given the condition he's in. I know he's still a world-class athlete, obviously, but, 5 rounds against a guy as big as Islam, I don't think he's going to hold up with that. So I think going into the later rounds, it's going to work in Islam's favor in comparison to the first fight.
And we've already seen a title fight involving Islam where someone tried to come forward and look for early finishes. That's Charles' style. In that first fight, he came forward, and guess what happened? First round, he gets taken down and worked, really. Grounded, pounded, grappling masterclass in that first round. And then knocked down when he came too far forward with a knee, right hook, knocked him down, subbed. So I'm not saying by any means Islam's going to go out there and get a 2nd round sub over Volkanovski. I don't see him finishing him at all. Actually, just Volk's so durable and tough to finish with that rugby neck that I don't see Islam being able to get a choke in. Yeah. But another factor in this fight, positive for Islam, Coach Habib is back.
Yeah.
all the aspects are stacking in Islam's favor in this fight, and that's why I have to pick him. A lot of the same points that you made, just the 12 days notice, the gas tank won't be there, and in those later rounds, it's going to be probably a grappling clinic from Islam. Going to be tough to find that finish. I don't think he does, but he probably wins this one like 4-1, and gets a more dominant victory than he did last time over Volkanovski.
I'm with you on that. That's about my exact same prediction. I think he'll win by decision, but this time around there won't be any controversy. I think it'll be very clear that he won the fight. I said this going into the first fight, Islam's striking is very underrated, and he proved that. He won a lot of exchanges on the feet against Volk. I think he'll continue that into this fight. I think he's going to win a lot of exchanges, especially if Volk, goes hunting for that finish early, thinking he can get it. Islam's good off his back foot. That's something he's got to watch out for. And obviously Islam's a much bigger guy. He has that reach advantage. That's a concern I have with Volk going into this one, but I don't think he's going to get finished. I think Volk's going to hold up, but it'll be a pretty clear win for Islam.
Man, even Islam on the back foot, just like he times his takedowns perfectly. Yeah. Like if that really is Volk's strategy to come out there and look for an early finish, like Islam's really good on the back foot, like you mentioned. I just think he has too many ways he could neutralize that, and he's just going to win some clear rounds in here, I think. But hey, it's been a year of upsets. So
who knows? Who knows?
This would be maybe I don't know about the craziest one because Sean Strickland was insane and Drickus, but Volk off the couch. That's a huge underdog story right there.
Absolutely, it would be massive, and I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him, and also I'm rooting for Usman. Not because I'm a huge Kamaru Usman fan, but just because of the balls it takes to take these fights. I mean, I gotta root for him off that alone. Even though I kind of like Chimaev, I'm still gonna be rooting for Usman just off that alone, for saving the card, essentially.
And, you know me, I'm a Colby Covington guy.
Yeah.
I have always been the biggest Kamaru Usman hater, called him a drug cheat, using all the same lines that Colby uses, right? Which, he might be a drug cheat. He probably is. Look at his brother.
There's reason to believe it.
His dad's a fucking doctor. He could easily get him, whatever. But, you cannot deny the balls this takes, because he talked about for months that he wanted this Hamzat fight, but at 170, and the guy can't make the weight, so I'm not going to fight him. I'm a welterweight, blah, blah, blah. I criticized him because I've wanted for, almost it feels like fucking 2 years at this point for Kamaru to move up to middleweight and challenge himself. And now on 10 days notice, he takes that challenge. I mean, come on, man.
Against an absolute killer.
Right.
At that. I mean, everybody's scared to fight Hamzat, and for him to take this on that short of notice, and Chimaev, he's had the last. We'll use this to segue into the co-main event now. Chimaev's had the last year off since that Kevin Holland fight to have a natural bulk up to 185. After he missed weight by 8 pounds, it was clear he's not making 170 pounds ever again. So he's had the last year off to and maybe it's because he hasn't had a fight be able to get booked. Nobody wants to fight. I don't know what the case may be. Regardless, he's had a year to naturally bulk up, put on some muscle, and get up to 185 naturally. Usman's going to be fighting. He's going to look like a welterweight out there, like he always does. He might have a little bit more body fat because he doesn't have to cut as much weight, but he's not going to look like someone who's had a natural bulk up to middleweight, which it's just scary. I mean, Chimaev, Usman's always had a size advantage when he fights at welterweight. Chimaev was one of the few guys who, if he were to fight him, he wouldn't have had a size advantage against him.
It would have been.
And now they're fighting at an even greater disparity in size. This is going to be a huge advantage for Chimaev.
And just like, we talked about advantages in that last fight. There just feels like so many advantages for Hamzat here. And
I think more
maybe. And you talked about like the natural bulk up to 85. This guy was preparing to fight the biggest middleweight, the beefiest middleweight, Paulo Costa. Just as big as you can get. I mean, he can barely make 185, Paulo. So, he was preparing to basically fight a 205er. He's been just training with the biggest dudes, the strongest guys he can possibly find, and probably ragdolling them still. So, let's be honest. So, why can't he go out there and ragdoll a smaller guy? I know Kamaru Usman is one of the greatest welterweights of all time, one of the greatest champions of all time. He went on an amazing run before getting knocked out by Leon Edwards. But, I just would have this is not how I envisioned a Kamaru Usman move up to middleweight going on 10 days notice, man. I want to pretend like he's going to have a chance, but I just don't feel like he has one, man.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't see much of a chance for him. And even these circumstances aside, if they were fighting at 185 and both of them had a year off to naturally bulk up to 185, I'd still pick Hamzat by a pretty clear margin. It's not a good style matchup for Usman, I don't think either. Because Chimaev's a better grappler. He has the threat of a submission that Usman doesn't really have. And when it comes to the striking differences, Usman, he gets any finish he has on the feet is come off moving forward. He hasn't really gotten any finishes. He doesn't have much threat off the back foot. Versus Hamzat, he has that crazy pace where he rushes in on guys, and that pace against Usman, who's not very good on the back foot, I just don't see him being able to win many exchanges on the feet. And then I'm not picking anybody really in the grappling department over Chimaev. So I don't see how Usman has. I'm going to say the dreaded phrase. I'm going to say it. I don't see how Usman has much of a path to victory in this one, given the style matchup.
I'm gonna differ with you. I think there's a path to victory because we have seen Khamzat Chimaev stand in the pocket with Gilbert Burns and eat right hands and get hurt badly and get cut up and get in deep waters. And he could have learned from that, no doubt. But I think back to like Kamaru Usman fights when he fought Colby Covington twice, right? And they're if he can just neutralize the grappling like it was in that fight. I'm not saying that Colby Covington's on the level of Khamzat, but if he can just neutralize it like he did in those fights, and they just sat right in the middle and traded with each other, and Kamaru had a lot of success with his right hand. He dropped Colby numerous times, and we've seen Khamzat get hurt by a smaller man in Gilbert Burns, right? So,
lightweight.
Yeah, a former lightweight. So, if Kamaru lands one of those right hands, we saw what it did to, Masvidal. We saw what it did to Burns. And, if he can just keep it standing in the middle, not get on the back foot with his bad knees, then I can see it. But
that's my concern, though, is getting on the back foot. I think he's going to be forced into that because of Khamzat's pressure. I mean, you look at the success Usman has on the feet, like you said, against Burns and Masvidal, both great finishes, but they were both coming from him moving forward. I don't think Khamzat's going to leave a window of opportunity for him to do that. Khamzat's pressure is crazy. I think he's going to walk him down. I think he's going to have him backed up against the cage, and that's where Khamzat thrives, and that's where Usman struggles. So when it comes to being on the feet, and Khamzat, I don't think we're going to see one of those Usman fights where he's able to just hold someone against the cage and out-muscle him. Khamzat's a bigger dude, much stronger than him. Has probably 5 to 10 more pounds of muscle on him than Usman does. I just don't see Usman being able to physically out-muscle him. And I don't see him being able to win many of the exchanges on the feet. So I'm struggling to see how he does it.
And it being a 3-round fight makes a difference because Kamaru is so used to these 5-rounders. He might be a little accustomed to starting slower, knowing he can get his get back in later rounds. He's going to have to come out here and start neutralizing Khamzat immediately.
And if Khamzat starts faster than anybody,
exactly,
so that's going to play into his favor for a 3-rounder.
And we saw what happened, in that, I guess, second fight, but kind of first fight between Leon and Kamaru. He takes him down, and he's on top of him. I mean, you're telling me Khamzat ain't going to be able to do that? And that's a round loss in a 3-round fight if that happens to Kamaru, even if he's able to not get subbed against a great finisher in Khamzat. So just so many paths to victory for Khamzat, and it feels like maybe one for Kamaru. And that's not a recipe for someone I'm going to pick. Even though we've had some crazy upsets this year, I already mentioned it, but I don't think I'm going to be picking Kamaru. I don't know. How about you, man?
I'm not. I'm certainly not. I'm picking Chimaev very convincingly. And another thing that we haven't even gotten into is the concern with Usman's knee. We saw that video of him during the open workouts. I don't know if he said, I heard something pop. I don't know. I'm not going to try and get into all that, but it certainly seemed like there was some cause for concern. And Justin Gaethje and Usman both rushed to Twitter quickly to say, no, there's nothing wrong. I'm worried about those knees. And you see how Usman walks and stuff, and you've seen the damage he's taken over the years, and all the there's been so much about how bad his knees are. I'm worried about. There's so much to be worried about regarding Usman in this fight, and it's impossible for me to pick him. I'm going Hamzat by a round 2 TKO. I think his forward pressure is going to be just too much for Usman. Even if the grappling is neutralized, I think Hamzat's going to dominate on the feet. I see him getting a knockdown and finishing it off with the ground and pound.
You know, I hate to just, agree with you because it's boring, but there really isn't any defense I can get. Like I already said, the one path to victory for Kamaru, and with his bad knee now, I don't know how legit that is. I would have been concerned about his knees, whether this happened or not. I mean, the guy has to walk backwards downstairs, so they're cooked whether something popped today or not. And man, I think he's gonna walk him down. I don't even think, like you mentioned, even if the grappling is neutralized, which I think there's a chance it could be, Kamaru's a great, takedown stuffer. He has been taken down a couple times, but other than that, he's been rock solid in his defense. So I think even if it does stay standing, which I think it will, he's going to overpressure him. Hamzat comes out so fast, looking to land a right hand or just shoot or what. I mean, he's a menace, man. Yeah. And he's going to be looking, I think, for a first round finish, and I think he's going to get it. He's going to make a big fucking statement to the UFC, and that middleweight division is going to be scared shitless. Izzy might retire. Because
forget that break he's taking. He might just make that permanent.
Yeah, if Hamzat's champ when Izzy's looking to make his return, he might just say, fuck it, I'm going to 205 for this quadrilogy with, or trilogy in MMA with Pereira and say, fuck middleweight. Because I wouldn't blame him. And Hamzat makes a statement, knocks out Kamaru Usman in one round, and he is the number one contender for Sean Strickland, man. It's going to be crazy.
There we go. All right, we'll move on to one of the 2 fights on the main card that hasn't been swapped around last minute. Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker. This is probably number 1 contenders fight at light heavyweight. I imagine the winner gets a title shot next. Walker's looked good in his last few fights. Something I'm thinking about just based off their last fights for each man alone. Johnny Walker won off leg kicks against Anthony Smith, which I know that's a big weakness for Anthony Smith. He's gotten chewed up by leg kicks over his career. That's nothing new. But Ankalaev, that was a weakness for him in his fight against Jan Blachowicz. His legs got chewed up. I mean, there was times where he was stumbling around. I think he lost around 10-8 because of leg kicks. And Walker, he won a fight off leg kicks in his last fight. So I could see that being something that plays well into Johnny Walker's favor. But I still think it's a tough road for Johnny Walker to win this fight. What do you make of this one?
You just got to think about the grappling, which Johnny Walker, who has some submissions off his back, he has, he's decent on the ground. He's a Brazilian after all, so they always got a little something, right? But, I just think that Russian forward pressure of Ankalaev, I don't think he's going to want to stand with Johnny Walker for too long, even though I think he could hold his own. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, Magomed Ankalaev, of all those Russian guys, he's a decent striker compared to a lot of them. And he's had some major success. He has great kicks. And he throws hands, man. He does. He's got power. He's a 205. They all have power. So I'm not saying he couldn't catch Johnny Walker because we know Johnny Walker himself is a pretty chinny guy.
Yeah.
He hasn't been chinny in his last couple of fights, but we saw what Jamal Hill did to the guy. Wacky, inflatable fucking guy from Family Guy, he looks like. But man, I don't want to say no path to victory because there's definitely paths to victory.
Yeah,
he's good off his back. He's a great striker, Johnny Walker. But Ankalaev just seems like a more complete, overall good fighter, and I think he'll be ready for those leg kicks and he'll check them well, and that won't be an issue this time.
Yeah, I think with Ankalaev, he doesn't really go to his wrestling unless he needs it. If he's starting to lose exchanges on the feet, then he goes to it. I think in this fight, Walker has an obvious advantage in striking. Like you said, he's a little bit chinny, but he's better on the feet than Ankalaev is. We know this. But man, the big disparity comes with the grappling. Ankalaev, he's gotten guys down and he can just hold them down. His top control is amazing. Yeah. But like we saw in the Jan Blachowicz fight, it wasn't until after he started taking damage to those legs where he started to get beat up on the feet that he went to the wrestling. And he 10-8'd both of those last 2 rounds. I mean, he was on top and he was dominant in those last couple of rounds. So I think this fight's going to play out similarly. I don't think it'll play out the exact same. But I think Walker's gonna win some exchanges on the feet, maybe catch him, maybe stumble Ankalaev a little bit during round 1, and I think round 2 is gonna come in. I think Ankalaev is gonna look for that takedown, get it, and he's gonna cruise those last couple of rounds on the ground. I'm looking at a 29-28 win for Magomed Ankalaev here, just off of ground control.
I'm also going to go Ankalaev by decision.
Yeah.
I think, with that big caveman chin, like you mentioned, I think Johnny Walker could definitely maybe catch it. Johnny Walker's a huge guy.
He's giant, yeah.
6'6", like those long fucking legs, long reach. He could definitely, overhand something, just catch Ankalaev off guard. And
I'm going to be praying for it. I'm going to be rooting for it because I love Johnny Walker.
He could slump it. He could slump him, man. He could slump anybody.
I could see it happening. I don't think he's gonna chin him. I don't think he's gonna put him out cold in round 1. I think Ankalaev will be able to recover, and then he's gonna go to the wrestling, and it'll just be a wet blanket fest for the rest of the fight.
And I do tend to agree. I just wanted to spice things up a little, and
give us some hope. Hope.
You got to play percentages of probability, right?
Yeah.
Sure, there's an 85% chance that Ankalaev smothers Johnny Walker and dominates him for 3 rounds, but there's also the 15% chance in almost every fight in UFC that you just land a big shot and knock somebody out. And
we've seen that 15% quite a bit this year.
And we've seen the 15% quite a bit. And if anybody can do it, it's Johnny Walker, huge guy. Yeah. Massive light heavyweight, and I'll be rooting for it, but I'm going to pick Magomed Ankalaev, probably 30-27. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. We'll move on to the next fight. We're going to talk about Ikram Aliskerov versus Warlley Alves. This is Aliskerov taking on a welterweight in Warlley Alves. I like this matchup a little bit more for him than I did with Imavov. Not because I don't think he could beat Imavov, but since we've finally seen some movement at middleweight, we have a new champ finally, and we have some, we'll have a new number 1 contender, either Khamzat or Kamaru Usman. Yeah. And then, we saw Dricus rise up the rankings after beating Whitaker. Finally, there's some movement in this division. We don't need to force these matchups where we have, young prospects who are 1 or 2 fights into the UFC taking on a top 15 contender. We don't need to force that anymore. I'm fine with this matchup. I like it a lot more for Aliskerov. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, and like you mentioned, they were trying to fast track Aliskerov as quick as they could, giving him
they were doing it with everyone too. They did it with Abus. He was terrible.
Abus looked good for 5 minutes, and then Sean Strickland was like, "You're in the big leads, buddy, and I'm gonna fucking dominate you." And that was embarrassing cardio. He lasted 6 fucking minutes, which 6 minutes might sound like a lot to some people, but not good in MMA. Not good in MMA, and that was a failed experiment. But Ikram, like you mentioned, I'm glad they're not doing the fast track thing anymore. They're giving him, I don't want to say a can in Warlley Alves, but it's a fight that I think he should win. Like you mentioned, he's a bigger guy, he's in a bigger weight class. It should be a fight. What's with all the fucking people from lower weight classes coming up in this card, by the way?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
It's gonna be weird if none of them win, and then hopefully they never do it again because it doesn't work. But
I don't mind welterweights moving up to middleweight like we saw with Michel Pereira last weekend. But on short notice, under these circumstances, not as big of a fan.
Yeah, against killers in a lot of sense. I'm not going to say Ikram's like a killer. He could be.
I mean, he knocked out Phil Hall. It's very chinny, so we're not going to call him a killer.
He's had one UFC fight. I'm not going to call him a killer. But, he's a hype prospect.
Yep.
And they were going to feed him a ranked guy in his second career fight, so they clearly think highly of him. I know they felt the need to try and fast track him, but you still got to have some confidence that the guy can, he would have beaten Imavov if you're giving him that quickly. Mm-hmm. So, Ikram's going to probably dominate. But the odds, can you talk about the odds of this fight?
I think that was a mistake on the UFC website. Okay. I sent it to Andrew the moment that it got officially updated on the UFC website. And they had Warlley Alves like a massive favorite. And I was so confused. I rushed to DraftKings to see what was going on. They didn't have any odds up on DraftKings. Like 30 minutes later, I check it again, and they had Ikram as a big favorite. So I think this was a mistake on the UFC website, which isn't the only time they've done it. For like a month, they had Paulo Costa as the favorite over Khamzat on the UFC website. But on every sports book, it was Khamzat as the big favorite. Yeah. So I don't know what they did with that. Some mistake again. They need whoever's in charge of that needs to be needs to be, I wouldn't say fired, but give him a stern warning.
Yeah.
Because it's the second time it's happened. They got my hopes up. I was about to go put a ton of money on Ikram.
I was gonna say, if anybody can find the sports book that the UFC is finding odds at, please send us the fucking link because we are betting a hefty sum on this Saturday. And my prediction, I guess, I think we'd be winning big because I think Ikram's probably gonna take him out of like one round, maybe.
Yeah.
And if not, he'll just dominate 3 rounds. So.
Yeah, I mean Ikram, he can hang with anybody in the feet. He's got the threat of wrestling. Alves just not that good, frankly. I think he wasn't successful at welterweight, and I know middleweight's a much weaker division, but he's not going up and fighting somebody. This isn't like Michel Pereira going up and fighting Andre Petroski, who sucks. This is Worley Alves going up and fighting someone who's a very hyped prospect, like you mentioned, in Aliskerov. I think Aliskerov dominates. I think he gets him out of there in round 1. I got him ending it in submission.
Agreed. I'll go knockout.
Okay, fair enough. I could see it playing out either way. And with that, we'll move on to the first fight on the main card. A pretty weak main card opener, I'll say. Said Nurmagomedov versus Muin Gafarov. I think I would have rather have seen Elliot Makayev be the main card opener, but we'll get to see Said Nurmagomedov again. Coming off a loss, and Gafarov, he's 0-1 in the UFC, so I'm struggling to see why this is on the main card, but. And maybe it's because Nurmagomedov, the name, that might be it. I don't know.
Yeah, and Makayev's a good little prospect at flyweight, and it's a ranked match. They just give these flyweights no love, man.
Yeah,
they're always like on the there's ranked matchups at flyweight on prelims of fight nights sometimes.
At the Nashville card that we were at, there was a ranked fight there was a ranked flyweight fight on the prelims.
Yeah, they give that division no love for some reason. I know they're not big draws. There's never been a big draw at flyweight outside of Mighty Mouse, and he wasn't even a big draw. I'll give you that. He was only selling 100K pay-per-views himself, and that's why Dana White was threatening to end the division there for a while until we got a fucking Brandon Moreno quadrilogy with Figueiredo. But all that aside, give them some love. I know they don't sell, but they put on exciting fights.
Yeah,
and. Basically, I'm talking about this because I don't want to have to fucking talk about Said Nurmagomedov versus whoever you just said.
Yeah.
My God, what a horrible fight. Said Nurmagomedov does not live up to the name. He stinks. He has no grappling. He really doesn't. Is this guy allowed in Dagestan? He shouldn't be. I don't even care. Just talk about this fight, I guess.
I mean, this is on the bright side. I don't see this fight going the distance. Okay. Because both of these guys have gotten a lot of finish. Gafarov has quite a bit of knockouts in other promotions, so who knows? Maybe he catches Said. But yeah, Said, he not a great grappler, but against bums, he has some submissions. I mean, he can sub some cans. And Gafarov, he's 0-1 in the UFC. My prediction for this one, I think this makes it into the third round, but I think Said puts him away in the third round by submission. I don't have a lot to say about Gafarov. I don't know too much about him. I just know he has knockouts in other promotions. So, he could win some exchanges on the feet. It could be exciting in moments, but yeah, not a strong main card opener.
Gafarov, whatever. I hope he knocks him out, and that's my prediction because I want to be different than you. We got to have one prediction differentiate. And let's go Gafarov. Knock this fucking Daggy out, man.
It hurts me to say this, but I predicted an entire Dagestani sweep for this card. That pains me.
They really did set him. They really did set him up for success. I feel like
they did. Yeah. That was that Abu Dhabi crowd's probably going to leave there pretty happy, I'd say. Unless Volk shocks the world.
On paper.
On paper, who knows? It's been a crazy year, so anything.
That 15%, man. That 15%.
There we go. Yeah. With that, we'll move on to the UFC Fight Night from last weekend. Yusuf versus Barboza. Man, that main event was incredible. Fight of the year candidate, in my opinion. When I was watching it was incredible. You got Yusuf with that 10-8 round one. He was dominating in round one. I thought he might get a finish. He might put Barboza out of there. And then Barboza just took over after that, and he landed a really nice highlight wheel kick knockdown, something that I'm sure when he retires, and we're looking at his career highlight reel, that'll be on it, amongst the other great wheel kicks. that was a hell of a fight. Vintage Edson Barboza. Sadiq Yusuf put on a show too, so hats off to both guys. Man, that was incredible.
And I've been critical of Yusuf in the past. I don't even know why, but he had a great first round.
Yeah.
He had never been in a 5-round fight before, so you would expect in a first main event like that, those last couple of rounds to kind of go like that against a seasoned vet like Edson Barboza, who's now acclimated to this weight class. I know he used to be a lightweight for so many years, and now he's made this move to featherweight. He had a tough run of time there for a little bit. He lost some fights, but it feels like he's adjusted to this weight class now. Hopefully the weight cut's going good for him. Like you mentioned, the spinning back kick that he's so famous for. He lands another one. Another one? Are you kidding me?
It was beautiful. It was delayed too. Yusuf was like standing up for a second, then he was tumbled over.
He's like, "Oh, I am really hurt. Holy cow!"
Yeah,
but, and that kind of dictated the rest of that fight. But the first 2 rounds on my card, at least when I was watching this live, I didn't watch it live Saturday night, but I watched it, what was that, Monday or something? And man, 10-8 first round, obvious, so close to finishing Barboza. That retard Bisping was even saying, 10-7.
that was ridiculous
for some fucking dumb reason. He's so awful at his job. But but then I also gave Yusuf round 2. And so, on my personal scorecard, I'm not a judge, but I gave it 47-47. It was a fight of the year candidate for sure. Man, what an exciting fight. And these smaller guys always put on a show, man. They're so fast. And Yusuf showed me something that I didn't know he had against a seasoned vet striker in Barboza. And it was just a great fight, man.
Yeah, that was a hell of a fight. I had Barboza winning. On my card, I had it 48-46. I agree with the 10-8 round 1. I think that was pretty clear. 10-7 from Bisping is absolutely ridiculous. Get that Cyclops off the mic. Yeah, Barboza, I had him winning the last 4 rounds. I had it at 48-46 for him. But still, yeah, I'm happy with the performance from Yusuf. Nothing to hang his head about. And like you said, it's his first 5-round fight, his first main event, I believe. So it makes sense that, into those later rounds, Barboza looked like you looked better into those later rounds, looked more experienced in those situations. But yeah, nothing for Barboza or for Yusuf to hang his head about. Still a great performance.
Absolutely.
I hate to, do all the moral victories and stuff, but had Barboza or Yusuf hung in there. He hung in there, especially with that knockdown. I think Barboza could have had him out of there after that knockdown. I don't know why he went for a sub. It seems like if he went, Yusuf was badly concussed. I think Barboza could have definitely put him away with some ground and pound. But
and I get it. He was in deep on the neck with that Darce, but
yeah,
in the third round like that, you're after the output they both had, they're bloody, they're sweaty after those first 2 rounds. To go for a sub there when you have him that badly hurt, you got to go for the ground and pound.
Yeah, absolutely. But still, Barboza gets out of there with a unanimous decision win. Great performance from both guys. Fight of the year candidate for sure.
They're warriors, man. They're warriors.
Sure. We'll move on to the co-main event of the fight night. A less exciting fight, Jennifer Maia versus Viviane Araujo. Araujo wins by decision. Jennifer Maia has been cut since then.
Did she?
Yeah, she got cut today. I saw it on the UFC roster watch page on Twitter. She has since been cut. Araujo, she looked better on the ground. She looked more dominant. She had more control. Maia had her moments on the feet. Overall, not the most exciting fight, but a win for Araujo. And yeah, Maia, happy trails.
I didn't watch it.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I wasn't paying much attention to it. I had some other stuff going on. I was watching all the other fights. This one I kind of tuned out for. I won't lie.
And I think on our preview show we said women's fight, flip a coin. The coin failed us this time. And you live and learn. Sometimes tails does fail.
Yep.
And I take this on the chin. Jennifer Maia, you said happy trails, happy trails. You'll never have to be on my fucking coin flip again. Fuck you. You ruined my. No, I'm kidding. But
we met. I think I would have had a sweep. Yeah. Or no, I had Giannis winning by.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah. So
didn't account for the leg.
Can't say she ruined the perfect record, but she ruined her career. She's out. So.
And with that, we'll move on to the fight we were just talking about, Jonathan Martinez versus Adrian Yanez. Dominant performance from Martinez. He didn't have to do anything except throw leg kicks. Yanez, he checked a few of them, but for the most part, he was just taking them, and his leg got chewed up. And Jonathan Martinez, he joins the main event winner. Edson Barboza is the only fighter with multiple leg kick finishes. So yeah, congrats to Martinez. Hell of a performance.
Impressive stuff. That inside leg kick is deadly. And when you have a guy like Giannis who's so dependent on the boxing, and to have your outside leg or inside leg that ripped up, man, you're just gonna not be able to generate any power in your punches anymore.
Yeah.
It was just over from there. He somehow made it out of that round, I think, right? And then beginning of the next round, just come out and do what's been working if you're Martinez, and it worked. Just fell to his back a few times, and then it was just over. I mean, you got to stop that fight. Good stoppage from the ref, and man, I thought Giannis would get back on track here, but it's a tough loss to take.
It's tough. I mean, he's got good boxing, but man, he did nothing to defend those leg kicks. And his boxing, I don't think it's on that top tier level. I mean, you saw Rob Font put him out of there in round 1, so I don't know. What there is with Adrian Yanez. I like him. I'm a root for him. He's funny on Twitter and stuff. But that performance was very concerning. I mean, he got chewed up by those leg kicks. He was, hobbling around on one leg during that late into the first round and into the second when he got finished. But yeah, didn't do much to defend the leg kicks, and he paid the price for it. And it's you would have thought he would have, had a game plan to go in and check those kicks, or at least step out of the way of those leg kicks, considering Martinez, he had that leg kick TKO over Cub Swanson.
Yeah.
So you knew he was going to come out there and utilize that, but he still was able to get the finish with it.
And, yeah, I mean, great performance by Martinez, obviously. Yanez, if his career amounts to nothing else, at least he beat up that racist guy that one time, and that was pretty cool. So he had a highlight moment, at least in the UFC. He might be on the Raw. I'm not saying he's getting cut, but he's a couple of losses away here from being in that territory.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be a fringe top 15 guy, but yeah, in his last couple fights against top level bantamweights, I don't see it.
Me neither, man. Yeah.
And we'll move on to Andre Petroski versus Michel Pereira. Another one-sided fight. Michel Pereira puts him out of there in round 1. We were saying that 5-0 record was fraudulent. Andre Petroski is not good. He went tooth and nail with Gerald Mearshart. He is not good, and we saw it here. Michel Pereira puts him out of there in round 1, and this is also further proof that middleweight is not that good. Middleweight is not that good.
Yeah.
Pereira moved up, and granted, even though he was fighting at welterweight previously, he looks massive for middleweight still. He's still a big middleweight.
He's like Johnny Walker, man.
Yeah, he's a lot like Johnny Walker in terms of their builds. So yeah, just bad look for middleweight. I know Petroski. Most people knew this, but still 5-0 in that division, and Michel Pereira comes in and makes quick work of him.
Petroski, I just remember watching his Mearshart fight, and I was like, how are these two men in the UFC? I know Petroski looked all right in the Ultimate Fighter or whatever.
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck? They pull like regional scene guys to be in the Ultimate Fighter, and none of them, at least in the past few years, have really amounted to anything. It seems like all the people that amount to anything now are Contender Series guys. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying put Petroski in the Contender Series, he would have got fucking smoked. So yeah, safe travels, Petroski. You're probably on the brink of getting cut here soon, and hey, Michel Pereira, a new man at 185.
He's scary at 185. He still looks massive at that weight class. He still has a size advantage against most middleweights, which is crazy considering he's fighting at 170. But now he doesn't have to drain himself. He still has to cut a lot of weight, but not nearly as much to make 185 now. So he could be a lot more dangerous at that weight class.
Yeah, and I say, they kind of punished him this fight, giving him a guy, lower on the card. Michel Pereira shouldn't be fighting fourth card on the main card of a fight night.
Nah. But it was a punishment for missing weight. Again, for the fourth time.
And so I think they'll look at this. They'll say, okay, that was your punishment, but you were too good to be where you are. We're going to give you a ranked opponent at middleweight next because, frankly, there's a new champion at middleweight. There's more parity, but hey, it never hurts to get some more contenders up in that top 15. And I think Michel Pereira would be a great addition in the top 15. Whoever you want him to fight, I'm excited for his next fight. Yeah,
and it probably won't take long for his turnaround. I know this year is pretty much all booked up, but I could see him being on a January fight night card, possibly. Being the co-main on a January fight night card.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited for Michelle Pereira at middleweight.
Same here, man.
And we'll move on to the main card opener of Christian Rodriguez versus Cameron Simon. And I have some words for Christian Rodriguez. You need to move up to featherweight, and Dana should, or the UFC should force him to, and they probably will. It's probably going to be the same situation like with the guy we just talked about, Michelle Pereira. They're probably going to force Rodriguez to move up to featherweight. Back-to-back weight misses. He missed the weight against Rojas, and this was an even more egregious weight miss. He came in 4 pounds over at 140 pounds, and he didn't look drained at all on the scales. It's like he didn't even try and make weight. And Cameron Simon, unfortunately, the undefeated prospect, pays the price for that. Christian Rodriguez, they had some exchanges. Both guys won some exchanges on the feet, but Rodriguez, he was pretty dominant on the ground, and he won the fight off that. Which, I know 4 pounds doesn't make a ton of difference, but not having to cut those last 4 pounds and not draining yourself that much, that does play in his favor quite a bit. So move up to featherweight. Fight up there. Even though he'd be a small featherweight, I don't care. You can't make 135.
Can't make it, man. You better move up. Yep. And it just sucks for Cameron Simon, like you mentioned, like an undefeated prospect. Flying to Las Vegas from South Africa. Cutting the weight, cutting those extra pounds, and then being told, hey, you got to fight a guy who didn't do that hard work that you did, even though you came in from halfway across the world. And he's a gangster for still taking the fight, honestly. I mean,
I was when I sent you the news that Rodriguez was 4 pounds over. I was saying Simon should pull out, should not take the fight.
But, no. He had long travels from South Africa. I'm sure he wanted to get that fight in, and he loses his 0 as a result. It sucks. I don't know if there's a way you can turn it to a no contest with the weight miss. I don't know how it works, but it sucks that he's going to have that one by his in the loss column now. But he'll bounce back and hopefully fight somebody that makes the weight next time. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I still have high hopes for Simon at that weight class. Rodriguez, move up. You are a featherweight, my friend. Good performance by Rodriguez. So he did look good on the ground. I know he had that 4 pound advantage, but I don't want to take too much away from him. Still a good performance against a great bantamweight and Cameron Simon. They both had good moments on the feet. Rodriguez better on the ground. Pretty clear decision win for him. That's all I have to say about that one.
Go to featherweight, buddy.
Yep. And we'll move on to some news that's happened in the last week. Some more chaos from around the same time as the UFC 294 shuffling occurred. Conor enters the USADA testing pool. Later that day, USADA says, we are not working with the UFC next year. Very interesting timing. I have my suspicions that the P that Conor sent to USADA blew up one of their labs or something. And that was enough. But no, on a serious note, very, very strange timing. I don't know if he returned a negative test or not, but I think USADA's had enough with the UFC strong-arming them and the clear favoritism that we've seen. I mean, with the drug tests, with the push for Conor to come back without that 6-month period, I think USADA's had enough for it. Next year we'll be seeing a different drug testing organization.
And we've seen this with the UFC in the past where they haven't let failed tests go public. We saw it with Brock Lesnar. Yeah. I mean, it took it was 9 months for that test to come back positive, and he was juiced to the fucking gills. Yeah, and everybody knew it. USADA knew it. Dana White knew it, and he didn't allow it to be public knowledge. Mm-hmm. And that's like you mentioned. Conor probably blew up a lab, and USADA's like, let's leak this. It happened. The guy is on steroids, like we all imagine he would be. He is. Yeah. And even today, you see Conor posting like, "Oh, they're coming on my yacht to piss test me 3 times per day." But it's never, as much as he keeps blowing up that lab, it's not gonna be made public because the UFC is not gonna let it happen. We saw it with Brock Lesnar, and we're seeing it with Conor McGregor. They're star child. So, man, I don't know.
And this decision for the organization they go with for drug testing, whether they independently test their fighters or if they work with VADA, the other drug testing organization, this will have major impacts on the future of the UFC and what they allow to fly. I mean, we've already seen on the drug testing number alone what fighters are kind of allowed to fly under the radar. You know, obviously there's a lot of UFC fighters on the juice, but many of them get away with it because of their star power. We know that, and you know, without USADA in the picture next year, if the UFC has full reign over their drug testing, it's going to be pretty clear that there's some biases there, and some people are going to be allowed to get away with that.
Yeah, and it's not even just like the getting away with it part. I mean, well, it is the getting away with it part, but it's also just like, you know, we saw with TJ Dillashaw for years. It took years for them to find out what this EPO stuff is. Like, so there's always going to be cheating. These fighters are finding loopholes. I guarantee it. You know, I talked about it earlier. Kamaru Usman's dad, you know, has a lab full of
pharmacist.
Yeah, drug pharmacist. He has a lab full of stuff that could fly under a USADA radar. Yeah. So, you know, hopefully whatever new organization is, it's run better than USADA, you know? I mean, USADA's let a lot of stuff fly, clearly, in the past, and probably letting stuff fly with his Conor stuff right now. And hopefully, you know, the UFC probably ain't going to allow it, but hopefully they don't let this shit fly from here on out. Because if you're a steroid cheat in a combat sport beating somebody's skull in, I mean, what are the effects of the CTE going to be if we let these guys juice even more than they already are?
Yeah.
We're going to see Uberine back.
I already had my concerns about USADA, but if it becomes independent testing or an even smaller organization than USADA, that, you know, I do question USADA's integrity because what they let happen, but I think it was more because the UFC is strong arming them, saying, "Hey, you're not going to, you know, this guy's not going to get punished. He's too big of a star for the UFC." And you know, a lot of stuff was allowed to slide. But if they have an even smaller drug testing organization come in and take control of that, it's going to be even worse, I'd imagine. So yeah, a lot of concern about the future of the UFC because of this news. Yeah, I guess it's just a wait and see thing. I know there was something about this. I just didn't think I'd be uttering these words, but the Saddam Hussein interrogation leader being the head of drug testing for the UFC next year. I heard a report about that. I don't know the validity of it, but it's a strange situation. So it's just a wait and see type thing.
And just the thought of them waterboarding Kamaru Usman, forcing him to admit.
Where did you get these drugs?
Yeah. Did your father supply these?
Israel, honestly, how did you grow a boob?
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, man. And like you mentioned with the middleman and all this, the UFC, Dana White is going to let a lot fly. And it's kind of scary. In a combat sport like this, you don't want to see drug use, but are they going to allow it, man? It's scary.
We'll see. We'll see. Only time will tell. That's about all we have for the UFC news. And yeah, that wraps up episode 11. If you watched this far, thank you. This is probably our longest episode. Thank you for watching this far. We had a great time. And if you would, please like and subscribe. And we will see you guys next week to talk about a great, hopefully, UFC 294 card.
Are we going to see some 15%ers happen this weekend, man?
Let's hope so, man. I'll be rooting for those 15%ers. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.